Start again, Brian. I think we tried it. I think we didn't have sound. Okay. You just go to those controls.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our October 19th North Middlesex Council meeting. Call this meeting to order. Roll call. We are just waiting for Councillor Nickel. She's running a little late. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. If you have any, please forward to the clerk. At this time, we're seeing none. Minutes of the previous meeting from October 5th. Any errors or omissions or business arising from those minutes? Seeing none. Motion to accept. Moved by Councillor Moyer, seconded by Councillor Keogh. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Department reports. We'll start right into those. A report from the Manager of Recreation and Facilities on the Park Hill Fire Hall project update. Brandon.
Mayor Roth, members of council, the report you have in front of you is a report outlining the progress of the Park Hill Fire Hall to date. Obviously, the project is not in a state where we currently want to see it. I'm just going to take you through a little bit of what's happened to date. So the first part was the tender result and subsequent contract. There were some change orders issued in that, some redesign that put a little bit of a hold on the front end and the delay in ordering structural steel. From there, the supply chain was not our friend during this project. We've seen some delays in some materials. The pre-engineered steel specifically did not make the site until September. The third thing was contaminated soils. This was the biggest impact to our project to date. Just briefly, while excavating for some storm sewer work, an oil tank was hit with an excavator that was under the ground. From that, it ended up to a cleanup process where all the materials had to be tested, stored, and then waiting for test results before hauling off site because they couldn't be reused on the project. During this, there was also a bone fragment found, which caused a complete shutdown of the project until OPP confirmed the bone was in fact animal, which was only about 24 hours later. During the oil spill, we did come across an open well, which sat underneath the footprint of the previous fire hall. We had to properly decommission this well. We brought in McLeod water wells to do that work. And then when we thought we were out of the clear, we were moving on to dig another part of the storm sewer, which we could. It was further away from where the soils were being piled to be tested. So we just basically moved to a different area of the job site. When they started digging there was quite a pungent smell in the air from those soils, a diesel fuel-like smell. Those soils also contained contamination. The contamination ended up being about $120,000 worth of trucked away material, and that's at $72 a ton. Basically, that pushed our construction window from when we were hoping to pour the floor in late August, finding the contaminated soils, cleaning up the site. We didn't really get back on track until mid to late September. Because it was mid to late September, some contractors who had a schedule for late August to say pour a floor, all of a sudden were trying to fit us in and then fight weather as well. So it has been quite compiled in terms of delay. Currently, we're looking at June 30th, keys, open door, and looking back through at the front end, we did boreholes throughout the property. One of the boreholes, I believe borehole number 3, was generally in the area where we found the contaminated soils and came back clean. So we're not exactly sure how that happened, but obviously we had been a meter difference. We may have found soil and this wouldn't have been a problem in terms of project delay. We would have cleaned it up the front end. Throughout the project, there had been some issues between everyone just trying to get everything moving. Senior staff all did sit down, senior staff of Valley, senior staff of municipality, and senior staff of KNL. That was about 2-3 weeks ago. And we all sat down, basically said what the issues people were having were and guide the ship in the right direction. And we believe the ship is back on. there's any questions. Obviously, the financial impact is there. It's rather significant in terms of, and that's basically soil contamination.
Okay, thank you. Just before I go to council with questions, I have one for you, and that is the contaminated soil, the last one. That was on the old fire hall property, correct?
That is correct. Yes, the co-op property, actually, we have not had any contaminants. So
Okay, yeah, just before we go to council, we'll ask to see if John, is there anything you'd like to add? Or Melissa?
No, we're just here if council has any questions.
Okay, thank you. I was just checking in. So I'll pass it on to questions. One thing, Brandon, on your report, everything's spelled out there. You put a load of information out for everybody to be able to check costs, and it's all transparent out there, and I like that. So Councillor Hemming, you'd like to start?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Rob. Brandon, did any of the involved parties willing to accept any kind of responsibility on the mishaps? And if so, what, if any?
through Mayor Op to Councillor Hemming, the mishaps, most of it's contaminated soils, supply chain, we can't really fight. When the supplier of structural steel or pre-engineered steel says you get it this date, and they say, we're falling behind, you get it this date. It's not anything that really the general contractor could do. We could do, Valley could do to prevent it. Yeah, had we. It did it earlier today.
Yeah.
So yeah, had it have been found during the boreholes, I mean, we wouldn't have seen as much cost. I mean, we still would have had to truck it away. Sorry.
Brandon, do you want to move to that? Yeah, over to that desk, if you don't mind.
So yeah, as I was saying, had it have been on the front end, we wouldn't have seen the impact, but to foresee that this would have happened, I don't think it's anybody who could have controlled it. So I don't believe that cost, fault, as it were, would be anything appropriate for this.
Okay, so all their tests and boring tests that they took, like it was sufficient tests that they took, or to just.
So yeah, it was specific in what we asked for when we asked to have in the contract. We said we specified the number of boreholes, they were spaced across the property properly. We just got unlucky with where it was tested.
And Jonathan's going to add to that as well.
Through your worship, I guess in terms of accountability, what I can offer for you today is that's why we're here, is to discuss the matter at hand. It's unfortunate. It's not what we want to see. Staff did question the integrity at one meeting of the borehole that was there. But that's why we rely on experts. There was a borehole that was taken. There was a grid pattern that was agreed to. 7 is general in the scheme of the site itself. The number of boreholes was reasonable. It wasn't deficient in terms of only doing 1 or 2. It was 7 throughout the area. And I would paraphrase this as we got some really bad luck on terms of the information that was provided in terms of the correlation of what the former site used to be. And we have to clean it up. That's the unfortunate thing. We have to lead by example in terms of if we expect the general contractor to be transparent and open on a private site, we have to lead by the same example. So the contamination really was what pushed this project to where we are today.
Okay. Councillor Keogh?
Thank you, Mayor Rob. I'd just like to add, with the acting or the site supervisor of this job, with it being a former service station of years gone by when environmental laws were much more lax, so there would not have been appropriate cleanup before that was deemed a fire hall, would site supervision not imply to an excavator operator that possibly we should just go a little light around here? There may be underground tank. I know that is standard practice in other areas, that it's an unearthed, long-standing, more than likely toxic area. Perhaps we should be just a little bit more diligent on this. And I know that this time last year, or even more than a year ago, it was quite a rush to have that building tore down in order to expedite this project. Well, this project really hasn't gone much more than the tear down, other than the the site excavation plus a large bill to follow. I know it's hard to get any recourse, and I can't really see getting any recourse from any of the contractors we do have, but perhaps maybe this comment should be brought to site supervision that old service stations, old dealerships, old farm equipment places, they most likely are toxic. And perhaps maybe there should have been just a little bit more investigation done in this immediate area before we did the tear down. We could have maybe shaved a bit of cost off this building if we know we were going to face this.
And through Mayor Ropp to Councillor Keogh, my understanding of that site was I did not find out it was actually a service station until after. I wasn't involved with heavily lifting in the front end of the project. But fair to say, most people involved in the project were pretty shocked to find out that it was a former service station. That information, when we look at our records back, there's not a lot that predates it being a fire hall.
And I'm not using you as a sacrificial lamb on this. I just want to clarify that. But I just know from my opinion that it seemed to be a rush. And I think perhaps this rush has incurred quite a cost.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Moyer?
Thank you. So I guess now the supply chain is pretty well set in place. We've got structural steel. So do you, other than weather delays, do you see any further delays that could happen on this? And I guess the question to you and also to Valley, I guess, that can we get some kind of guarantees that they'd stay on top of this and work through any issues that do come up as well?
Yeah, so to Mayor Ropp, to Councillor Moyer, currently everything's ordered. Right now, they're just hoping for some nice weather to finish the floor. They've got half poured. As soon as that's done, they'll be standing the pre-engineered steel, which is on site ready to go. And then they'll start closing in the building.
So the labor for the structural steel is set as well?
Yes. Yeah.
That is-
Rockwell is ready to go.
Okay, thank you.
John, can you offer anything else?
No, I think you've covered it unless council has any other questions.
Okay, thank you, John. Deputy Mayor Canales.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. My question is for Mr. Valley. Mr. Valley, as Councillor Moore just alluded to, there's a significant delay to initiate the construction of this particular project. Can you share with us the specific reasons? And I know the supply chain is a fallback on why nothing happened, but can you explain to us why there's such a significant delay when other projects and other communities seem to be on track?
I think what you've heard from your staff tonight is that the major reason for this delay is all related to the contaminated soil and the need to get in there and excavate that. And while they were doing that operation, it precluded them from doing other operations on the site. So their critical path, if you will, has been delayed directly because of that cleanup operation. So that work is now complete. The floors are being poured, and as you heard from your staff, the structural building, the pre-engineered building has been on site now for quite some time. And now that the floors are being poured, the contractor he's going to pour the second part of the floor, I believe, this coming week. And then the structural steel will be erected and the project will move forward. But the big delay has been over this contaminated soil and the inability of the contractor to do other work on site when he was in that operation of excavating and removing that material.
Well, I appreciate your answer, Mr. Valley. However, the excavating and the beginning of construction did not begin until late into the summer months. And so the lot was actually prepared last fall. So my question for you specifically is, why did construction not begin in May, late April or May?
I believe some of that was supply chain issues, and Melissa from my office may have some other more information on that than I do, but I think the contractor was at that time waiting to get going because he knew he wasn't going to get structural steel. He knew he wasn't going to get certain materials for a certain length of time. Didn't want to mobilize, start construction, and then have to pull off the site and wait for things like the pre-engineered building to arrive.
But as a site manager, would you not have encouraged him to begin the excavating at any rate? So the concrete could have been poured much earlier.
Perhaps the other challenge that you get, if the contractor mobilizes and then is not able to get materials, that would often create a claim for delay of project. He would say, it's not my fault that the supplier's not able to get material. I'm going to have to walk off the site, and there's a claim for delay. So, we don't want to put a contractor in a position where he has to mobilize and then leave the site and then remobilize, and that can often result in extra charges to the municipality. So
I have one final question for you, and that is, given that the time of the year and the concrete work that is going to be going in, I expect within the next little while, what guarantees do we have that this concrete will survive in good shape through the course of the winter months when the building will not be closed in?
So anything that's done over the winter time, I think you're concerned about like winter conditions for concrete pour. Am I understanding that correctly? Is that the concern?
Yes, it is. If the floor is going to be poured and obviously there's going to be moisture on the floor, in the walls, down the footings, we could have a potential for a heavy frost like we did in 2014. What guarantees do we have that if something should happen, that will be replaced at no cost to the municipality?
So there are standards and specifications for all of that on the project, which are standard documents. Our staff is there to review the work of the contractor, make sure he is complying with those documents. We have testing companies on site, testing materials. And so that is all taken care of. There's lots of projects where these things are scheduled during the winter months and they have to be done during winter months. So provisions are made for that. We just have to be sure that the contractor's doing things correctly.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? No other questions at this time? I think it's, as you said, it's safe that none of us are happy with the speed or lack of speed that this project's gone. And hopefully that we're moving forward from this point on at least. And so having said that, maybe the beginning of the year, we can have another report come in as to how things are going.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Is that it for council? We do have our recommendation to accept the report. Moved by Councillor McClinchy, seconded by Councillor Hemming. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
You too. Our second report is a manager of recreation facilities. Once again, that's the Victorian Order of Nurses contract to return to the facilities.
And Mayor Ropp, members of council, after a long delay from COVID, the VON is wishing to move forward with their programming that they used to operate in our halls. In the past, there had been an agreement in place that they would get our halls for free use, and in turn, they would provide free programming for members of our communities. The two attached agreements, which were on the agenda there, one for Elsa Craig and one for Park Hill. What I'm looking for is approval for council for them to have free use of the halls until, I believe, next October, in which they would renew their contract again with us.
Okay. Any questions from council on that? No, we have a motion in front of us. Moved by Councillor McClinchy, seconded by Councillor Moyer. All in favor? Carried. That's good to see that happening again. Passing of accounts. Do we have Estelle? So Estelle's joining us by Zoom because she did not feel well today. She did test positive. So I hope you're feeling better, Estelle.
No, it's getting there. It's getting there. We'll just leave it at that. Okay, so the report that you have in front of you outlines the municipality's expenses for the period of September 30th to October 13th, 2022, totaling $1,593,358.10. I open the floor to questions.
Questions? Councillor Hemming.
Through you, Mayor. Maybe Brandon might be more apt to answer this one. On the accounts, it's 001091. It's the Nairn Pavilion best cooling for 447. What did that repairs for something?
Yes, so through Mayor Ropp to Councillor Hemming, what that was inside the pavilion building there, we have like a cooler fridge. The compressor went on it, Best came out, repaired the compressor and got it back running.
Okay, I was wondering if it had something to do with the ice cooling system.
No, not the ice cooling, it's just one of
Okay.
the standard refrigerators in there.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Deputy Mayor Nelson?
Thank you. My question is more for Jonathan Graham, if I may, since Mr. Hodgins is not here. I see we're still paying for Landmark and SEMA for the Osprey Water Tower. It is online now, is it not?
Through your worship to Deputy Mayor Cornelison, you're kind of stealing my thunder here because I did want to inform council that as of yesterday, the water tower is considered substantially complete. That is related to its primary use, which is the water tower. We still have civil works left and a couple of deficiencies to go through. So we're getting very close to being done. We'll probably be transitioning into warranty period over the course of the next couple of years, effective December, and it'll be fully accessible for its primary use in relatively soon. I would also like to note that we have had some issues with some computer components as it relates to the fill-up station. But luckily, nobody's looking to get water except for maybe our fire crews, and we're looking into possible bypass situations until we have those electronic components in about another 4 months. But it is substantially complete.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the accounts? Councillor Nickel? Your microphone.
Safety boots, Mr. Safety Shoes Incorporated for safety boots for $4,611. Is that fire department or is that for our workers?
Through your worship to Councillor Nickel, this is for our workers. It is for our recreation workers and our public works workers.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No other questions? We're looking for a motion on the Councillor Moyer, Councillor Nickel, all in favor? Carried. Thanks, Estelle.
Thank you.
Okay, committee reports. Lake Current Pipeline. ABCA, anything you'd like to add?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do, actually. In reviewing previous budgets, I would say that our apportionment has increased slightly from 11.76 to 11.79 as recommended by the ministry. So the total for the budget proposed as it stands now is $167,180 as opposed to $162,882 that we paid last year. Now, the board, they came to us with a 3.77% increase. The board has directed that they return with a revised budget tomorrow for 2.5%. I did ask for 2%, but I was outvoted by all board members.
Okay.
The other thing I would add too, Mr. Mayor, if I may, is that phase 2 of the Conservation Act changes takes place tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning, which unfortunately I cannot attend since I do have a board meeting with the Salva Bayfield at the same time. But it's really interesting for anyone who has any interest in the changes to the act and how they'll be applied towards our municipalities.
Any questions for Adrian? No questions for Deputy Mayor? Blue Water Recycling? Economics Development, no. Local school? Other than we'll find out who our trustees are on Monday night. Recreation? Nothing there. Policies hasn't met. Fire Committee, I don't believe yous have met. Okay, correspondence. Township of Adelaide Metcalf, notice of adoption of community improvement plan. Receive and file. Middlesex County Planning Department, North Middlesex, Westwood Meadows, 39TNM 2201, notice provided. Anything you want to speak to that, Jonathan, on that?
Through your worship to members of council, this is just more of a standard subdivision practice in terms of notification to the general public, part of the provincial policy statement that we have to follow. So too hard to say what the timeline would be because that really comes back to the developer in question and pushing their personal agendas ahead. But this is just a formality in terms of identifying the appropriate stakeholders.
And that is
That is over
this
on.
is what we used to call the merit.
Yes.
Yes. That's
Yeah.
just so everyone realizes. Question on that?
Yes, I do. Jonathan, when do they intend to begin construction on those units over there?
Preliminary consultation, it is a very odd one, as you recall, because of the legacy issues that we had with it. Technically, building permit, it could be issued today, and we have been asked to do that, but knowing the construction season, especially for the asphalt plants closing, we've asked for them to put base coat asphalt down, because if you don't get it down in the next couple of months, then it's just gonna be a mess for a better part of 4 or 5 months. The contractor or the developer, the patents, very reasonable. They agreed to that. So we'll see curb and gutter probably the next week, week and a half, and then building permits to follow. A preliminary one has already been issued for foundation, for footings, and we'll see a foundation probably in the next little while as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on that? Municipality of Huron Shores streamlining governing legislation for physicians in Ontario. Okay, we'll come back to it. Any questions on that? Okay, the North Middlesex website data, user breakdown and behavior. Any questions or comments on that? I had one, and that was on looking at it on the second, not the first line of graphs, but on the circle graph, it says other is like 70%. What is other? You know, on this one here, what is other?
To Mayor Brian Ropp, I just thought this was interesting, and since we've lost Amber Tiller, our communications officer, this came through as a generic push, and I thought sharing it with council would be appropriate. As far as I've been able to tell, other is a kind of a stall. Someone kind of just goes on our website and sits for not a little bit, but might go to a place that we haven't identified with this list. We can refine it as we move along. The other thing that I would like to see in the future is that, especially on the agenda side of things, some of that might be internal staff and try to navigate the agenda. I'd like to separate that as well too, to get really to the general public and what they use for our access in terms of our communications effort. So this is just our first step in identifying some of this.
It is interesting what they're going on the website for. It does identify what people are going on it for, so. But I just wondered what other was. Question on?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Jonathan, has there been any feedback on the content of our website and how accessible it is? I'm particularly thinking of community events and social media and all those type of things, and of course the activities the municipality undertakes.
Through the worship to Deputy Mayor Cora Nielsen, the biggest feedback I've had is, again, unfortunately, the dummy links that don't work. I looked into it a little bit more and subsequently found out that our old website was still active in the background. So I've put a stop to that. So the server's completely gone. So that will stop some of the duplications, but you're going to go to a 404 page error in that instance. So we're looking into correcting those as we move along in a more proactive approach, because before it was just reactive. Somebody identified it, didn't work, we'd fix it. So we're trying, that's the biggest complaint that we have. In terms of our social media, with the transition that we have at play right now, we've reached out to the county. We've been able to have some success with a gentleman there who's helping us in the sidelines, and we haven't really skipped a beat, I feel, in terms of what's relative for our communication. Right now, that's the election and Park Hill Main Street as a focus, unless told otherwise.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilor McClinchy?
Just with the user behavior overview, like North Middlesex puts out postings and that, but the public cannot respond to those postings back on that website, can they? Or how does that work?
Through the worship to Councilor McClinchy, we actually rolled out just recently, about a month ago, a user portal for driven complaints. So people can access departments through generic, rather than calling. Again, this is just human behavior trying to figure out what's the best position for us, but people can respond and provide feedback anonymously, or they can give us their email for follow-up. So we just went live with that, but I think we've only had one complaint that Brandon brought to my attention the other day. So we're going to look into promoting that a little bit more. It's more of a seamless integration with our asset management portal, which offers continuity for that asset, but only one so far.
I think that's a good idea, because a lot of times they say that they never get no response, but by them responding in return, they can get feedback.
Yeah, and again, the other generic things that we have up there are our email addresses, council's email addresses, that we're trying to be as accessible as possible. And this is just another tool that we're starting to leverage recently. We can do a better push. I think a little bit with the election, it gets a little drowned out.
Yeah.
And certainly in the new year, we'll be promoting that more.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on that? Okay, next one is Municipality of East Ferris Childcare Workforce Shortage. Receive and file. Township of Perry Healthcare Connect System for members of Canadian Armed Forces. We did file that on September 21st. It's just another one coming through. Municipality of West Perth, opposition to Bill 109, strong mayors building homes, and that's been proclaimed into law already. This is just more municipalities who are voicing their displeasure with it. And if you saw in the news, I think it was yesterday, the mayoral candidates in London responded to that. So that's all of our correspondence. Other and urgent business. Brandon, I believe you have the first one with the VAX bus.
Yeah, Mayor Rob, members of council, this is just a verbal update that the VAX bus will be returning to North Middlesex. It will be at Park Hill Community Center on November 20th. They'll be there from 12 to 4 p.m. to give out boosters.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
What is the booster shot that they're providing? Like understand that the fourth shot is a different type of shot or immunization than previous ones. Do you know what it is that they're providing?
I'm not 100% sure on that, but I can definitely find out and we can advertise that in our social media as well.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Sunday, November 20th.
Any other questions on that? So they're just coming to Park Hill that one day, correct? Okay. Others, the water tower, you've already spoke to that because so I have a couple of short things, and one is the election night on. It's coming. Election night attendance that we have our results here at the council chambers, and inviting all of council to come here to see that, also to our new councilors to come on Monday night, Monday evening to see the results. They set it up and maybe they'll find a sandwich or a cracker or something for you.
What time is that, Mayor Rob?
What time is it? 8 o'clock?
Yes, Mayor Rob, the results will probably start being published about 8:20 or so, but 8 o'clock will be open.
Okay. Also, just a note, Richard, if you'd speak to the voter help center.
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor Rob. The Voter Help Center is now open. It's open every day from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. this week, including Friday. It'll be open till 6 o'clock on Friday night as well. And on Saturday from 9 a.m. until 1 p.m. And then again on voting day from 9 a.m. until 8 p.m. Voting closes at 8. So we would certainly encourage anybody who wants to avail themselves of that Voter Help Center to come in and use the terminal to vote if they'd like to. Of course, there's always the availability if they have access at home to vote by computer or vote by telephone. But certainly the Voter Help Center is available here. And as of right now, we're up to about 10.8% voter turnout, which is approximately 450 people, somewhere in that neighborhood. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Any questions on that? We do have one more item on the list, and that's physician facility rental in Elsa Craig. Brandon, I believe that's yours.
Yeah, Mayor Rob, members of council, we do have our agreement with the two doctors in Elsa Craig, Dr. Norm Furtado and Dr. The first name escapes me, but Wagner. They have verbally renewed for 5 years at 1.5%. So it's good. It'll keep them in for, it's the longest term we've ever had with a doctor, and they're quite happy to be there. They also wanted to share that they've been so busy that they've actually brought on another nurse full time to that office. So yeah, I thought I'd give that as a verbal update, and they should be signing the contract at some point this week.
Perfect. Thank you. Any questions on that? That's great news, €5. Deferred items are sitting in front of you. Communications, including the Middlesex County. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor Rob. I did have an opportunity to chat briefly with the county engineer last week when at our county council meeting. And he indicated to me that the tenders for the Black Bridge would be going out this week. He also expressed some flexibility in terms of the Parkville Main Street rehabilitation, not really sure what they would be doing in terms of ripping up the pavement this winter, because he said that they would definitely have to have pavement down for plowing snow, and they didn't know if they could get there with the current weather conditions.
If you're looking at me, so I can offer a little bit of a counterbalance to the discussion through the deputy mayor, that is correct. In speaking or been in conversations with the county staff, there's actually a couple compromises in terms of using polarized reclaimed asphalt on site, so that it will reduce our cost for the project overall. And second, we narrowed the limits in terms of phase one so that we could get base coat asphalt down prior to winter operations. So we are treading very sensitively, and we've been quite clear with Pt.1, the awarded contractor, that we don't expect an open cut per se that's long where we could get caught, rather that it's going to be short snippets of what we can do, and we just go until the weather tells us that we can't, or the asphalt plant's closed. So the biggest thing that we're trying to avoid is disruption in the downtown core, the concrete mainly. But we will see stuff to the north, the very north, where we have the residential footprint, and that's where we're going to put most of our focus and attention on. The other thing I'd like to highlight, if that fails, we still have Elliott Drive that we can do the water main over there with minimal impact in terms of the road reconstruction or hard surface restoration. So a lot of balls in the air, but it is coming along.
Councillor Moyer.
Jonathan, with this project and the grant, you had mentioned earlier that there had to be some progress and some invoices sent to meet some timelines. Has that been done?
That is done. The purchase, it's really the purchase order for the initiation of the project and the signs going up from the federal and provincial government that they want to see. It's always nice to show that you're moving ahead. Really, the pressure is coming from us to Pt.1 on substantial completion being July 1st of next year, which I think is very important for the business community, that we get in and out as fast as we can. And Pt.1 understands that, and they want to make sure that they can get a little bit done so that they don't have this massive project. And it is a massive project within a window of 6 months. So they're trying to shave as much as low-hanging fruit as it would be off. But the more we engage with the project, the better it looks for us in terms of the provincial grant, because we don't want to be going back to them asking for schedule changes because we didn't start the project. So it's looking pretty good, and I have talked to our counterparts at the Ministry of Infrastructure to make sure that they're okay with it, and they are. They're encouraged by it, that we're moving ahead. We're one of the few, I believe, that of this scale and size that is actually trying to tackle it as it would be. We're being very cautious also with scope changes, because sometimes you leave yourself vulnerable to that. So we're just tackling things that we know concrete that we need to do, with some modifications for temporary measures, but we're moving ahead.
Any other questions? Questions for county at this time? No other questions? The calendar for the Middlesex County Council meetings is there as well. One comment, the next county council meeting is the day after the election. It's next Tuesday. So, pending on the results of that election, of course, on Monday, but it is the day after the election. Yes. So we're looking for, I should, just before we go to the reading of the bylaws, I want to welcome our acclaimed new counselors that are sitting in tonight. And that is Chuck Daigle, will be the incoming counselor for McGilvery, and the incoming deputy mayor, Paul Hodgins, coming to welcome tonight, gentlemen. So reading of the bylaws, Richard.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are two bylaws on the agenda for tonight. The first one is to authorize the agreements with the Victorian Order of Nurses, as has already been identified. And the second bylaw is a confirming bylaw. So the two bylaws are 101 and 102 of 2022.
Councillor Hemming, Councillor McClinchy, all in favor? And third and final, Councillor Nickel, Councillor Keogh, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. At this time, we're looking for a motion to go into closed session. And it is for the purpose of litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. And for secondly, labor relations and employee negotiations. Counselor Hemming, Deputy Mayor Ellison, all in